great.
because
Hi.
I'm doing it and then everyone does it their own way.
Do we have a,
Okay, we do. We do. All right, so I guess we'll get going here.
6 people, let's.
Bobby coming?
Order, and we do that.
I mean, I think he wants to be able to phone in if possible.
Councilmember Burns?
Yes. Maybe we can
I love it.
I can send him
do a Google Meet link or something. Yeah.
Like my steps a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. But I
Is
just,
Councilmember Wynn still on vacation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she won't be here.
yeah, I don't connect to the internet. I connect to my phone, so as long as my phone's connected.
Do you want me to read you the number that's on this thing?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Do we need to set up a, oh, yeah, I'll click this. Phone number is 319-449-0253.
Welcome to Google Meet. Enter the meeting pin followed by the pound key.
I don't see, where's the pin? That one there?
Your call will be connected when you enter the pin followed by the pound key.
868-391-081 pound.
Thank you. You have joined the call, but you are the only one here.
Want me to send that information to Councilmember Burns? Do you want to do that?
Okay, yeah.
Too? I can remember I'm looking.
Let's go read it. Just a lot of times. Slow. But it's the no reason it's not doing. Stop asking.
It might be insured.
Yeah, well, he's always giving these reasons not to, that he didn't think were legitimate reasons for the investigation.
Illinois government finance officers.
You have joined the call, but you are the only one here.
We probably, no, I'll defer to the chair, but we might be able to get started.
Okay, I thought we were going to wait.
I think
for the call.
Councilmember Burns?
Yes, I'm here. I don't know
Very good, okay, we'll get going now.
whatever device is close to the conversation. It sounds a little far back, but I can. But I am here. You can start.
Great, okay. So, call to order, and it looks like we have a quorum. We want to take attendance.
Okay.
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, Councilmember Wynn. Let's see. Recording now. Okay. Councilmember Burns.
Here.
Councilmember Kelly.
Here.
Councilmember Newsma.
Here?
Councilmember Reed. Chair Livingston.
Here.
Member McMillan.
Here.
And Member Rikus.
Here.
Okay, thank you.
All right, it's way over. I guess it would only be in-person public comment, given the issue, so we have no.
Oh, I might have one that's, because someone thought they could call in, and so I said just send it to me. Okay. Just send, can you use? So this is recorded, right, Jess?
Everyone else has left the call.
You disconnect.
Bobby?
Here briefly.
Okay, I have one public comment here from Mary Rosinski. Good evening, committee. I appreciate the challenges you have in helping create a fiscally responsible budget. I am concerned that this committee was not included in the preparation of the budget proposal for 2023. It seems to defeat the purpose as defined in the committee description. Evanston must curb unnecessary spending and pay 100% on the police and fire pension. We need a mantra to preserve and maintain what we have. Don't buy what we don't need and plan for the future. We must properly maintain our public buildings and not spend what we don't have. Thank you. Mary Rosinski.
Okay. All right. Did everyone have a chance to read the minutes?
The only one here.
We have a motion to accept the minutes.
To move approval of the minutes.
Second.
Okay. Want the roll call?
Sure.
Voice vote.
Voice vote, yeah. Seat chair, if you can just ask for voice vote.
Sure. Voice vote's fine. Fine. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. It's passed. All right. So our first item is, and only item for action is the single audit. matter.
Just to kind of give you the stage chair. This is the single audit. It's like a federal grants audit. So we just kind of put this thing in front of that. It goes to the city council too. And we have what we call unqualified opinion from the single auditors. This is all about the federal grants. And
You have joined the call.
every year,
You are the only one here.
this is presented. The deadline is 9/30, 9 months from the end of the fiscal year. So this is as of December 31st. Regular audit was presented to this committee and the council, I think the last month or before that. And so just, accept and place on file is the single audit report.
I will move that we accept and place the single audit report on file.
Second.
Vote.
You can have your voice.
And I do have a question. Like you said, we had 9 months from the end of the last fiscal year.
Right. I mean, December 31st is our fiscal year.
Right. So that takes us through the end of September. We're already into October. Are we late in approving?
No, we got the report and we submitted by 9/30th because there is no council meeting on, say,
Yeah.
9/30th, or
Right.
the committee meeting.
Right. So
But we did submit by 9/30th.
the report has already been
Right.
submitted and we're just accepting it.
Right.
I thought we had Sickich as our auditors, or is this?
Sickich is the regular auditor.
This is the brand.
This is for the federal grants.
Oh, so we have different auditors for that.
Okay.
Is
Is there,
that common to different auditors? Is that typical to have
I
different
mean,
auditors?
this is the minority firm, so we asked them to kind of go with one minority firm at least,
I'm sorry.
This is the minority firm, Prado and Renteria, who does this single audit. So we at least kind of, MWE is our goal. So we try to have them kind of give out at least 25% to a minority firm.
I see, so for the grants in order to.
Right, so
provide grants,
city has a contract with Sickich, and then Sickich selects somebody which is a minority firm.
Okay. This is
So
just-
Sickich elects them, not.
Right, we
So
don't
this is
have a
a
contract with this firm.
Right, this is a subcontract.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, I was just a little
Okay.
confused.
Anything of note in this
No,
audit?
it's the unqualified opinion, so.
Okay.
all right. So we'll voice vote to accept it?
Aye?
Aye.
Right?
All right, fine. Okay, so now let's get more into the matter at hand, which is the budget
Right, so
discussion.
we have the presentation. We will, I think, however we want, but I thought that let's just first kind of finish the presentation, so at least maybe sometimes you get your answers in
Okay.
the next slide or something, and then we will cover any and all questions, So-
That's fine. That's fine.
Right?
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so let's move to the next one. This is the overall proposed budget, all funds.
Sorry, just a quick question. Is this online? I mean,
It is on the agenda, which says agenda, yeah, I think we can put now the word agenda and packet. Is the thing which says agenda has everything? No, not the, or not this.
This is
Yeah, I
not
didn't
this.
see
Right, we will post it after this meeting is over, but yeah, we will
Okay,
bring it up
yeah,
here.
it'd be great if we could have it in the agenda, just generally.
Okay.
It just makes it a little
I
bit.
mean, sometimes we work until the last minute to update any information, and basically, yes, for the council members, pretty much this would be the presentation on 17th.
This is a preview.
Okay.
Right, except some more additional
It's
information.
just for my eyes. Where do I, if I want to, is this just what's on the website?
We will post it
It's
right
not
now,
on the
yeah.
website.
Okay, so is there any
But-
place I can pull it up on my?
Yeah, so let's see that. Can we want to post it on the website,
This
Or just
presentation,
email?
the presentation?
could it just, okay.
Or
Could
in
it-
the
Maybe just
meantime, email it to us.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
email
email
it.
it to the committee members, so that way, yeah, might be
I'll email
easier.
right now.
Thank you. It's just
Thank
easier
you.
for me to-
I think in the meantime, if folks find, if we start.
Okay, I can just move forward, I thought in case of, but at least, yeah, we'll keep the appropriate slide here so you can follow along. So increase from 22 adopted budget of around 42 million. Mainly it is because of the capital projects in the water fund, capital fund, CIP fund, which we are all the streets and parks and whatnot. So this is like around $17 million increase. And general fund is a 7.4 million, mainly it's the personal items. So that's why, compared to the last year, we have seen the increase in the expenditure of $42 million. As I said, the budget is posted on the website, proposed budget. Even today, we posted all the memos for the new position or new expenses. So if you, particularly like any big expenses, yes, we have posted, we asked the department to have the justification memo. So I think we just posted right later today, yeah. Going into okay, let's move on to the next one. Proposed general fund revenues, and I think I mentioned with the council members that we have increased our budget for some of the revenues based on the current year and the past year. Looking at the history, I'm like, okay, we are doing pretty good in income tax. GEMT, this is the ambulance money for the federal grant for the Medicaid, we get it, and obviously we used to, when the program started a few years, we used to start it with a very conservative estimate. But looking at this last couple of years and talking to the fire chief and others, so we have increased the budget by 1.3 million in the revenues. Personal property replacement tax, again, same thing. Some of those taxes we have increased. Hotel tax, we have recreation program fees and nature tax. So we have bumped up the revenues while looking at the current year trend. Next one. Proposed general fund budget expenses. This is what the general wage increase. We kind of looked at the market and it's like around 5% it ranges. I mean, all the unions, fire, police, and the AFSCME, the big ones, the contracts are up for renewal this year. And most likely, those would be wrapped up after the year end. So we have to come up with some kind of fair estimate of the increase. And then there's a new positions of around $2.4 million. There are some one-time expenses about the equipment, cardiac monitors, tree inoculation. Some of those are contractual increases to the inflation, and then elimination of MFT transfer going into the general fund, which we have eliminated.
I know somewhere. Where are open positions?
Yeah, we would get to that.
Okay.
Yes, we have this thing, and then we will kind of discuss on each subject which you like.
Okay.
This is the kind of a 23 baseline budget and the proposed budget. When we say baseline, it is just without any changes to the revenues and expenses. And the last column where you see that general fund total revenue at $125 million and expenses at $125 million. And in those you would see that the expenses, what are those salary increase, positions, one-time expense, contractual increase. And how would we make up that? And that's where we proposing to use some of those excess general fund reserves from the last year as of 2021.
Sorry.
Oh, right there. Yes, corporate property tax levy increase. We are proposing a 4% increase to the corporate property tax levy, and that's how we are balancing the. Now, one thing which came up in our discussion with the council, we haven't shown any revenue from the ARPA fund. In 2022, when we balanced the budget, council approved $4.25 million to balance the 22 budget. This year, in 23, we are not showing that, and the one reason is a kind of good news in the sense that we have enough excess out of our 2021 fund balance. So instead, we are trying to use that first and let the ARPA kind of be used on some of the other things. But obviously, yes, ultimately it is the council which would give us the direction, how they want to kind of,
We've already booked the ARPA revenue.
Which one? Oh yeah, we've got the money. Right. But we are not showing, last year we had to use them to balance our budget. This year we are not proposing anything from ARPA to general fund.
Can I just, a general question?
Sure.
Later on, are we going to be able to see the 2023 budget versus the 2022 budget and the 2021 actual, or?
Oh, I mean, it is in the proposed budget document. If you have seen that, we have the numbers.
Yeah, I just, because it's like, I don't know how these fit
Right.
into other years.
But if you look at the proposed document, and we will just bring it up to show you some of
Okay,
those
so
items.
later on we'll be able to see
it is
that?
posted
Okay.
up. This is like a summary, kind of putting
Okay,
the high
okay,
points,
thank
and
you.
then
Okay.
let's go to the next one. Yeah, this is the one which I was talking about.
Okay.
That this is our 21 actual audited numbers. So we ended with around $31.4 million. That is, don't have the highlighter. Yeah, $31.4 million in fund balance. And what is our requirement at 16.66 is around 19.6. So we had excess of.
Proposing to increase that 16.6 up to 20%, I think.
That is proposed now. This is as of 21.
Why would you do
So these are the real numbers. I cannot
that?
retroactively
No,
go
I
back.
understand, but why would you, for 23, propose to increase it over to 20% up?
Oh, okay, we will cover that. Yes, it's a good. We will look at it. So we are showing the excess of $11.7 million, and some of those things which we have listed there been approved by the city council, which equates to around 4.9 million, and leaving the excess.
What's been approved?
These are the items: use of fund balance, transfer to CIP fund, transfer to CIP fund, fire truck purchase, bonus, retention bonus for non-union, transfer to solid waste fund. So those are some of the items.
What about the thing we approved, the firefighter, is that in?
Yeah, that was for this.
That's but coming out of ARPA fund. So that's why it's not here.
Okay.
So these are the items which totals around 4,879,000, around 4.
That Northwestern gave us the money for the fire truck, is that right?
They did, I think we then purchased another.
Yeah, this is the
Okay.
extra one.
Second.
And then the excess is around $6.8 million. And out of that 6.8, we are proposing to use around 4.6 million excess to balance 23 budget. Let's move on to the next one. These are the projections for the next 4 or 5 years and how it looks. Taylor, you want to talk about it?
Yeah, I can talk a little high level. So it's the 3-year outlook based on some of the items that are requested this year.
Did you flip together? Did you flip
Yeah,
over
can
the
you
page?
go back to
Yeah.
the other page?
Yes, sorry, they are showing the same thing. This is just a smaller, less busy, slightly less busy version.
Okay.
But so when Hitesh presented the general fund update mid-year, we were projecting about a $7 million surplus. We're committed to updating those numbers at the end of September, since we'll be 75% of the year, 75% of the way through the year. And so the presentation at October, City Council will have some updated projections for this year through September.
I'm sorry, the 7 million you're referencing the 6.8 for 21 or for 22?
The $7 million for 22.
For 22 is 7 million.
Yep, and so this is the same projection that Hitesh shared last month, 7 million, but like I said, we'll update that. That includes things like the salary and wages coming in under budget, real estate transfer tax, those types of things, helping contribute to another strong surplus in 22. We've had a couple good years, most definitely in terms of revenues and containing expenses. But as Hitesh said, a lot of that is due to inflation. So we know that some of our revenues have surged to some record highs right now. Not sure how sustainable that's going to be. But that has allowed us to capture some good surpluses, which Hitesh already talked
But
about
our
in
revenues
2021.
looks like they're going down from 127 to 120, proposed.
127.
127 and 21 to 117 to 120. Is that correct?
From 21 to 23, correct. Yeah, so
But on the bottom it says increase.
the revenue's estimated increase we're building it into our modeling for it to increase by 2% from 23 to 24, 24 to 25, 25 to 26. And so that's more forward-looking, 2% increases looking forward in terms of revenues. And so
What's the intergovernment, or the other rev, 2.1?
Is all those grants and other revenues which we get, we call it under intergovernmental.
So you're saying that we're gonna get $1 million less from that going forward?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's a lot higher, and we have seen a couple of years here with some of the grants, if we don't get it, I mean, it's a big kind of, what do you call it, a variation there.
a lot of that is grant driven, and we only budget grants if they're known and secured. So we
Well, it's interesting to see what you're projecting, like going down from 5.9, is it fines and forfeits, or intergovernment that goes from 5.9 down to 3.1?
Why
Why would that drop so substantially? And why would other rev drop so substantially?
we can dig into those two numbers a little bit more. They're each comprised of so many different individual line items. There may be one thing that was a one-time thing that is no longer something we get. So
Yeah, I would
we
say
can
for
dig
anything
into
that
it.
exceeds like $1 million or $2 million, it'd be great to see.
Some of the detail.
But this is like in general, which says that expenses estimated to increase by 3%. That's the kind of assumption we put it there. And revenues estimated to increase by 2%.
So when you do your full year outlook in October, it'd be good if this were more of a full year outlook column, to provide more.
Right.
In
Details.
fact, I need to put it over here, right? It's more relevant now than the 22 adopted would be. What's the
Yeah.
22 outlook? So
Yeah, projected 22.
Yep.
So our expenses aren't really correlated with inflation that much?
I mean, both sides, yeah. To what extent, like suppose we pay higher amount for some of those consulting services, supplies, equipment, small, which falls in the general fund, like fuel cost. We transfer the money from general fund to the fleet fund for the extra
It
fuel.
just seems that low 3% if inflation's
Yeah, I mean,
7 or 8.
we assume right now, I can't go with that. Most times you must have seen what, 2% CPI, 2.5%.
Right.
So that's why we are going with that, yes. And we heard about IMF talking about the recession next year. We don't know what's going to happen, So I can't base on 9%,
No, I just want to make sure we're
No,
realistic.
you're right, absolutely. So
Also, though, 80% of our expenses in the general fund are salaries and benefits, and those we do control. So
Okay.
if we say 3%
So it doesn't
salary and
correlate
benefits,
exactly with...
right.
Okay.
And again, this would be reflected more accurately once we have all the contracts signed up. And we say, okay, every year they're going to get 2%, 3%, or 5%. And we will update our model, Yes, sir.
can we anticipate a budget amendment if the contract negotiations conclude and we end up paying more than you
Yes.
penciled in here?
Right. But that would be in 23. Right, yeah.
So right now, we're looking at about an increase of $8 million in salaries.
So then, going back to that fund balance policy,
We are getting there, yeah, we will talk about it, so let's move to the
Yeah,
next.
maybe-
Is it the next
Can I just say
item?
one thing?
Uh-huh.
In this presentation, this is really showing, because you're burying it here in the
Right.
fund balance, these are really deficits of $4 million, 4 to 5 a year.
Correct.
We're
Right.
using up fund
Right,
balance
right.
as it is now. That's
Right.
sort of, we're going from the 7
The revenue doesn't make
year to
sense.
date,
No,
whatever that is,
27.
to sort of.
Right, we are showing that if you see then highlighted in blue, the fifth line from the bottom, ending fund balance, so from 31 as of 21 to like 15.8. So it's still a lot of money, 16
But the
million.
revenue doesn't make sense to me because we go from 127 in 2021 only to 129 in 2016.
Yeah, but as I said, and we will look into that, but sometimes we see a big $1 billion and we know it is only for the 1 year. Like we got the grants for, like say, Robert Crown, $1.2 million. And now that revenue is for only 1 year, we know that. So
but
we
that's
have,
5 years out, and you're saying that you're...
I think that's where we really want the 22 outlook. right? We had the adopted, we know we've beaten it, so right now, we're kind of.
Or we can do this thing.
Unless
is that-
2021 was an anomaly, there was something.
I mean, I can have the second scenario where we can just say revenue increased by 3%, you know?
Yeah.
I can tell you too, just having just did a budget in Schaumburg too, our 2021 revenues were record highs across the board. They were the highest we had seen across the board. Sales taxes, hotels. It was mostly the economy. It was mostly the post-Soviet COVID consumer surge of sales taxes, home rule sales taxes. Those soared to and
It's
income
the other
taxes
tax
as
that
well.
looks like it really.
And so the concern that I have looking at that is that those 2021 numbers probably in Evanston were record highs as well. So the fear of being able to sustain record highs given some of the economic outlooks is of concern too.
And obviously one thing is, I mean, you have a good point. We'll continue to update this model.
Yeah.
Like one big thing which I said, as soon as we have the union contracts done, we will know the personal cost for the next 3-4 years.
It's the other tax,
It's
that
the other tax.
63 goes down
Right.
to
I mean, Clayton,
51.
props to you for putting together something like this. We've never had that, so,
Yeah.
so appreciated. And
Right.
we're
Yeah,
just trying,
definitely.
No.
to make sure we understand
It's
it
fair,
all.
and we can
Yeah.
definitely dig into the other tax and see what the big
Yeah.
There might
contributors
have been
are.
a one.
Or even we can cover one thing if you feel like, and I can present in the council, like I can update, as I said, revenue estimate, put it at 3%.
That's our biggest category, other
Right.
tax. I mean,
Instead of 2%, which is a little conservative,
Yeah.
we can go say, okay, revenue estimate to increase by 3%. So that would cover some of those, you know?
You know, this is great. Thank you
Yeah,
for doing
that's-
Yeah,
that.
this is
Okay, move it.
So looking at the next one, just a few things we did want to mention. This is just collapsing the revenues and expenses.
what they're saying.
We know that there could be some potential permit revenue from Northwestern Football Stadium. There's a couple other things in the works that may help get us out of this kind of
And that is the
structural
good
deficit.
point. I mean, council members would know, Northwestern has a big plan of Ryan Field. We haven't included permit revenue, could be a 5, 7, 10, we don't know. But I think the direction we got from city manager that once we have kind of know a little bit more timeline, you know, with some accuracy, and the amount of, we could, you know, include that. Okay, this is the, yeah.
Nitesh, can we talk about my question with regard to the fund balance?
Yeah, right there, we are getting there, and so the
Okay,
fund
all right.
balance right there, yeah. So this is the fund balance policy, and as I said, in last year and a half, whenever I went to and see the other peers, you know, the finance directors and other, even some of the city managers, because of the COVID, what hit, you know, like suppose what happened in Evanston, employees took the furlough days, 10 furlough days, because we were losing the revenues. In Skokie or some of the surrounding communities, Schaumburg, did you guys take furlough day?
Yes.
Right. So because they had a high fund balance, and these are some of the policy of some of the cities. Evanston is 16.66. Evanston Public Library is at 4 to 6 months. Bartlett 25 to 35. Schaumburg at 40%. Skokie at 25%. Niles at 40%. Des Plaines at 25%. Hartman. So we realized that the bottom number outside of Evanston is 20% from Naperville. So we thought, let's move it up to 20%, and not just over 1 year, otherwise
The
it's...
philosophical problem with that is you end up then bloating what you need, and, you know, this will all be stocked up in bonds, I'm assuming. We're gonna end up having to borrow at 7% and we'll earn not so much.
No, we will continue to use, like I think we, as you see, some of the money we use to reduce our bonding, when we move some of the maintenance items to the general fund out of
Well, I guess
CI.
when we get to the bonding part, we can
You
talk
know.
But I mean, we can reduce the amount, because it's crazy.
Yes.
You're proposing a lot of.
And again, I mean, this is, as I said, I mean, I think I mentioned it to the council, this is the staff recommendation. The council would look at it, you know, we will have the town hall meetings to hear the
Yeah.
people, and then finally the council will direct us that, okay, we want to go
Yeah, and I
this.
just want to make a comment with some of these cities too. It is important, I mean, just some of the profiles of some of these cities, whereas we do have the highest percent of tax exempt property. So the way this
Let's,
plays out.
oh,
Well, I just want to say, like, so
I-
when they could have a higher.
No, no,
I
let
would
me
like to
just-
know where that information comes from, because I think
Yeah,
that's a
so-
misperception.
right,
But there are
let's-
many communities that are higher as a percentage of property value.
No, no, this is what I bring it
One
up.
thing on this slide,
There's a lot
Uh-huh.
of misinformation out here.
yeah, I agree with that.
Go ahead.
One thing on this slide, I wonder, you know, what is considered within the general fund and not within the general fund is fairly arbitrary within itself. I mean, move certain funds within and out of the general fund in the first place. So why does this number even matter? Why does it matter that we have, whether it's 16% or 20%? I mean, that number could be vastly different if we choose to include certain funds in the general fund.
No, we cannot include certain funds.
Well, there are certain funds we can't. Yes, there are certain funds that we
enterprise
certainly
fund,
can't.
TIF funds,
Sure.
special service area
Sure.
funds, all the CDBG and all those.
But there are other funds that we can. I mean, our human services fund
Right.
could have been a part of the general fund. So,
But if I include human service, what would happen is ultimately the fund balance definition would go up because now we had the expenses of 3.5 million. Point.
My greater point is,
Yeah.
why does this even matter? You know?
It matters one place where I ask by these rating agencies, whenever we go out to the bonding or this, they ask about what is the fund balance policy and are you compliant? And in the past they asked me that, okay, you have 16.6% and you are below that, 2 years back.
Yeah, but do they? I mean, now we're at 16.66%, and we're above it. So,
Right.
what is changing it to 20%? Are they going to look at that and say, "Wow, we're going to
And
give you a better"?
Definitely, as a good positive thing, general fund balance, the
But
fund
we could
balance.
literally take money out of the general fund, put it in another fund, and have the same, the same amount of money in the bank, and we're at 30% all of a sudden if we were to take money out of the general fund. So why does it really?
I mean, they look at it, as I said, the definition of general fund, they look at the expenses, okay, and say, what is the fund balance policy, right? I mean, the higher the fund balance policy, I mean, some of those cities like Naperville, they have a AAA rating.
So I guess by raising it to 20%, what do you anticipate will be the outcome? Are the
Outcome
rating
would be
agencies
the
going to
yeah.
increase our bond rating or give us a lower interest
that
rate?
could be the one of the things which might help me with that. And the second thing is, in the future, any contingencies like COVID
So what is
or
our
recession,
rating now?
we are at AA from the S&P.
And so the next level up is
two
AAA.
ratings is a AAA, AA plus and AAA.
Oh, so AA plus and then AAA.
AAA.
So you believe that if we were to change our policy to 20%, that can get us to the AA plus?
It's one of the factors.
But it means it increases our debt when we do,
Yeah.
because we're bonding out more.
Maybe.
Right, maybe.
I think we could still look at, when we've talked about this, why do we have, what I think relatively so much cash relative to debt as well, right? So there might be a way to sort of deflate our balance sheet at the same time. How do we make the cash we have,
Right, and that
The
is
less-
the...
that
and that's
fund
a good
balance is
point.
not, if there's an opportunity to sort of shrink some of the $60 million worth of cash relative to the $100 million worth of debt in the general fund, what if we only held 25? How do we might be able to have less debt outstanding if we could find a way to hold less cash.
And
If
would
there's
that
a way
have,
to do
that
that.
sounds like that might have a greater impact on
Right.
our bond
So
rating.
we have to see these things that, okay, like again, these funds are like say 35. So when you see the bonds at like say 20 million, I cannot intermingle and take it from here and give it and use it for water or parking for with enterprise funds and like that. Or if it's for a TIF debt, we have issued the bonds for TIF. It should be separately accounted for, and particularly it's a taxable bond for the TIF. So we have to kind of make sure that we keep it separate. Now, to your point about using our fund balance. So I think in our summary document, right, in the proposed budget, and we can bring it up there too, to show how we are drawing upon the fund balances. So to your point,
I'll say, if I was looking at the city with a 40% balance, I would be pretty concerned about how much cash you're holding and not using.
Wait, and that's your city, X-City, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, they have a AAA bond rating. They get great rates on when they go out for debt. They didn't have any furlough days. They've not laid anybody off in my 8 years there other than poor performing employees. So there were the property tax delay that's going on right now with Cook County. They don't have to issue a letter of credit or a line of credit for that. So there's a lot of perks along the way to kind of keep more stable finances and not have to go through these kind of peaks and valleys with it. So that was their approach.
But that 40% wasn't necessarily.
I think
right
40
and all
seemed a
that.
little high.
Yeah.
40 definitely helped with, they carried huge debt as well because they built a big convention center, hotel and convention center, carried $120 million in debt just for that building, and still
Was that
managed to get a
an
triple
IRB or
A.
a GO bond they did that with?
That was not a geo bond, that was,
A revenue
correct,
bond,
correct,
yeah.
correct. but it still carries on their balance sheet and
Yeah, no,
impacts
no,
their rating.
So this is the thing, like, where we are showing that, okay, we have the deficit budget, and someone says, okay, why you have the deficit budget? And one of the things is like, ARPA fund is the big one, where we have received the money, but now we will have to spend it. So it will be a deficit budget. There won't be any revenue, but all the expenses. Same thing in water fund, general fund, West Evanston TIF, housing, motor fuel. Like, as I mentioned, like in CIP side, we haven't issued the bond. We are still spending the money, So I talked to Lara Biggs, our city engineer, and she said, yes, we will continue to review where we are after 6 months. But she said, we would be okay until the next spring or summer, to defer this bond issue until we draw substantially on our fund
Go
balance.
through these items, and I don't know how, I printed out the spreadsheet for the 5-year capital improvement plan and how you're getting to this, what I think is an enormous bond, GO bond, that you're talking about.
And she's going to talk about at the next city council on 17th, which is a special one, talk about the CIP,
Well, yeah, and Councilmember Burns and Clayton and I had the opportunity to
Right.
meet her. I mean, we can go through these and kind of talk about, I think that this needs to be a discussion around need to haves and want to haves, because there's some stuff on here that I certainly wouldn't bond out for in this environment. I think the less you can, the least amount of debt we're going to be issuing, the better off we're going to be.
I mean, we have a twofold seeking the direction from council. One is which projects they think are critical to move forward. That's the first thing.
But I asked her to come back with those that we absolutely have to have for safety.
Right.
We haven't seen those yet. It's
Yeah,
still the
like, I
same
don't think the
list.
fountain is
This was
critical.
not discussed, it was presented to us, and I asked her to please come back with those that we absolutely have to have versus those that, we would like.
And again, I think
We
she's
haven't
working
received
on some of the things for the 17th. So, and that's where, that's the first direction. Okay, we don't want this thing. Lara, exclude that. We
And there are
don't need
things
it.
that we do want that don't even appear here. And I think I speak for more than just myself. We want to fund the police and fireman pension. I feel it's been irresponsible over the years that we have been funding it at 90%. It's blown up. It's, compounded that 10% that we aren't paying interest on. I spoke at length today with a guy from Forensic, Jason Franklin.
Jason,
And it is what I thought it would be, 4.5 million more to fully fund it.
I mean, we'll,
Because
Put
this
you on
is-
a path to fully fund it. Put you
Yeah.
on the path to it.
No, that would be 100%.
I think that 4.5 is to get you on the path. That's the incremental amount,
No,
to
that's
be
the
on the
difference.
path to
Interest on the
100% by
10%.
2040.
Correct, exactly, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's the
You're
10% interest
Yeah.
that we are paying.
Yeah.
So, and that's what helps to bring it down as opposed to escalating every year. This would actually be paying down every year that we aren't paying that 10%. It's been escalating every year, so it's blown up about 100 million in the last 15 years from only paying on 90%. In the past, like last year, it would have been about 4.2 million. It would have been 1.2 the year before that. This year, it's 4.5, and it's going to accrue and compound again. And this is all debt that we're leveraging on this town and on the residents. Every year that we don't pay that, it's growing. So to move closer, yes, to that. But if we don't, we're just going to keep getting further
No,
forward.
we said the same. Should we keep going on the general
Yeah,
thing?
and
I
then
think
we will
I think there's a couple of things on capital priorities that we need to have a discussion, focused discussion, and pension that we need to have a police and fire pension, and
And to your
what
point,
is our target level and how are we going to fund that? I think how we're going to fund the incremental pension contributions as well, and we can't, as we've talked about too, our current estimates of pension expense are using beginning of the year asset values, which are off by probably 15%. So all that sort of comes together on
okay.
two big areas: pension,
Yeah.
capital, open positions. Let's keep going on.
Yeah. This is the summary of the tax levy. So you would see that general fund tax levy, the increase, that 2.6 million. Human service fund, we are keeping the levy same, even though we have a healthy fund balance and I talked to Ike, and we could have like maybe a room for maybe $500,000 reduction there, but he just wants to keep it in case we just saw the one which approved by council last night, about 50,000 for the, what do you call, migrant refugee fund. So he's thinking about that, okay, any programs like those come, so he wants to keep the same, but otherwise I saw, because as of September, I think it is sitting at around 2.5 million fund balance. And then I add 3.1 to that. I don't know whether he could spend that 5 million, but it's like a conversation we have in mind, and the council has to be ultimately kind of give a direction. General assistance, $1.3 million. Again, there's a little bit room there, not as much as $500,000, maybe 100,000 reduction, because it has some fund balance too, and we can reduce potentially by, a little bit there. Library fund, their board approved. Yes, you have a question?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
you just answered it. Who approves the library budget? It's the library.
Board, yes. They approved
Well,
it, but
ultimately the
ultimately they have to
council.
come to the tax levy for the city council.
I don't really understand why they're asking for more money when all we do is close libraries.
And if they have a fund balance of up to 50%, why do they?
Yeah, right.
I mean, I asked them to drop on their fund balance because they are at close to 35-40%,
Yeah.
but somehow, I mean,
What is their bond rating, I guess?
no, they are part of us.
Oh, so then, why the heck do they need to have a
Right.
50%?
Do you give them any direction? And when you see that, do you say?
I mean, I told them, like, suppose what we did is last year, that they wanted to issue the bond, and they wanted to include, so at least we, I think, excluded them from the bond even for 23, that I said, why don't you use, because they are close to, I think, 35-40% fund balance.
That was the whole argument of
Right,
closing
but-
south and north, the south and north branches and,
In-
moving it all into Crown.
In that sense, in the budget, city council doesn't have any control. They come to the, and this is what city council did 2 years back, I think, when they did not approve their
I think they're an
levy.
independent board. I think they're an independent board.
No.
They are independent board appointed by the
They
mayor.
have to approve the increase in the levy, so.
And they can ask for everything left
Quasi-independent.
Yeah, it's like
Okay.
they can approve their budget, but when they need the money for tax levy purpose, it comes to the city council, and city council has the right to change.
Okay.
Solid waste fund, we still kept the levy same. The council approved $1 million transfer, so we would have very minimal increase in the rates for the residents. So that helped a big time. Solid waste has been running the negative balance for the last many years, because even though it's being an enterprise fund, we're not getting enough user fees from the residents. So at least we give the portion of property tax levy plus extra $1 million out of general fund, so that we have around 1.8%, right? That's what the increase. Debt service, this is the reduction of around 600,000. Debt service library, pretty much even. Fire pension and police pension, you see the numbers, it's kind of a pretty even.
And so these two don't make any sense to me, right? I mean, I think that's based on an old asset number, right? So
Yes.
if we redid the recommended contribution to 90 or 100, maybe both, right? 90 or 100% by 2040, but again, using the September 30 asset balances, which are substantially lower, I've got to believe it,
Right.
if we're 100 million lower in our assets than we would have projected ourselves to be, you can see that would affect that.
Now, two things is, I think we have talked about so
$4 or
many
$5
times.
million. Yeah.
One thing is, like last September, the market was up 25%, I guess.
Right, don't you use like a 3-year average?
5 years
5
smoothing.
year?
Yeah, so that's why we use this 5-year smoothing, and not,
Yeah.
means not Evanston. It's
Everyone
under the,
does.
everyone.
Yeah.
Because to avoid these things, 10% up, 20% down,
Right.
30% up, so we use that 5 years.
And what percent does that get us to, the 9 million?
Which one?
It increased, right? 90%.
90% by
90%.
2040.
90%.
The one thing which I always mention that 90%, most cities, including Schaumburg, Naperville, some of the stable communities, they use level percentage. That means is you have to contribute more as the payroll goes up. we use the level dollar. So we estimate the dollar and divide by the remainder of years, contributing higher. And I think we contribute around 2.5 to 3 million more every year compared to the minimum required in the state statute. Obviously, it's not a financially sound formula, but yeah, we are well above the state minimum required.
Well, and I would say the state minimum required sort of has gotten us into this mess,
Well, they
okay?
never should make that law.
But it would just be interesting, as opposed to using some sort of random or smooth number. We should know assets are at here, and we're projecting to be 90 or 100% funded by 2040. We need assets to be here.
No, but do you agree, like, okay, next year we are up 25%, we would capture that?
Well,
Then
No,
again,
no, I think we're so underfunded that we should base our expense based on the lower of either the
Yep.
beginning of the year balance or the 9/30 balance.
He's
And
absolutely right.
until we get to a place, because otherwise we're just pushing off.
Yeah.
If we find a year that we overperform, great.
now here's
But
the,
let's say this is where we
But
are,
don't the
here's what we
actuaries,
do, 90 or 100.
isn't it standard for them to do the smoothing?
yeah, it is smoothing, but he says that even with the smoothing,
Right,
the
even
way
with
the market is right now.
You could put it towards, so he highly recommended that we should pay this 4.5 million, which should be, I understand, because it's 240 million right now that we're in debt. And it's going to increase. Will start us on a better path. And I think we need to come up with that money, and I think we still haven't heard about surpluses sufficiently, because I know, like, I want the surpluses broken down more. I believe the surpluses are far greater than what's shown on here.
But would you support, so if this number has to be, if we need $4 million more to get to a 100% goal or whatever it is,
Right. So it doesn't include.
can we do that out of incremental property taxes for?
So I think it's.
And
not
again,
about-
4.5 million is based on this number there, the
Or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Whatever, if we're 90 or 100, based on where we are, where we are today, where have we got to any beginning smooth balance is sort of, it'd be interesting to know, is it higher or less than, is the smooth balance, how does that compare to where our assets are today? The only thing that matters is where our assets are today, right? Anything else is sort of a fantasy, right? And what's our goal down the road? And what's that required contribution? It would just be interesting to know how much higher it
So
would
in
be.
the past, it's been like, had we been paying on 100%? In the past, it was only a little over $1 million over the years. Now, because the rates is at it costs us 4.5 million this year. I think that there's many different places where this can come from without increasing our tax more, and I think even annually. It's just that this hasn't been done, so it should be figured into our budget annually. And I think that we can figure it into this budget, and I would ask that staff go back and figure it into this budget. And I would say, yes, to Leslie's point, let's not do 20% next year during a year where they're expecting a recession in 6 months, 6 to 9 months. I mean, this isn't a good year to say, oh, let's go ahead and increase this. We don't need to do that. I mean, there are a lot of places, and I think I want to see fully salaries, what we budgeted for salaries, not by department. I want to see a full-on, what we budgeted, where we're at in terms of surplus on salaries. I want to see where we're at in terms of property transfer taxes. Last year, we were millions ahead, but we didn't know that when we were trying to figure out our budget. I think that the money is there, that we can do this, and we should start this year, and every year this should be part of our budget when we're planning our budget. Because it's been, to me, what we've done to the Evanston taxpayers in terms of, this pension debt up to $240 million now, we didn't need to be there, and we can start to reverse this.
I mean, ultimately, you have a good point. I mean, I have heard it from the past. I mean, they are not there, the council members. They say, why we are giving more than the state minimum?
What's the disadvantage of us to go to 16 versus 20? Does that
Disadvantage?
affect our rating? Like why?
Yeah, it is the rating could be the one because they always ask about it, and particularly when we were low compared to even 16.6. The other thing is the big thing when the COVID hit, as he mentioned. We reached out to some of those communities because the employees were initially not kind of receptive to the idea of taking 10 furlough days, So we reach out to some of the others, and then because of the revenue loss of almost $6.5 million, and that's how we balance that 2020 year So that we cut down so many expenses, hiring freeze, vacant
What
positions.
if we like we went to 17 and then maybe 17 and a half?
That's what we are doing.
But
Okay.
We are
we're
doing
starting
18.
here right now.
Huh?
Right, by the end of this year, we're going to be, what?
18% goal.
The goal, but the actual is higher.
Actual Korea could be.
So I think we get into trouble when we build a budget based upon an assumed deficit that's just being funded by drawing down the fund balance, right? So it is, I guess.
I mean, these are some of the, it's a good point, and that's where I think I mentioned somewhere in the council meeting that, okay, if we don't do this, I'm like, what are the options, you know? If we don't do property tax levy, I said, can you give us the money from ARPA like last year? And we can balance that 2.6 million, and then we don't have to do that. That's the other option. Or go deeper into our fund balance and use that one without raising that. And yeah, and ultimately what it means that, okay, it is keep it at 16.6%. We'll look at it again next year.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So I mean, these are some of the options. You know.
So when we have a
And
budget,
just to chime in, I just wanted to say that personally what I support, unless, you know, our financial people in the room think that it doesn't make sense to do that, but I am leaning towards fund balance, ARPA, et cetera, not supporting raising property taxes. Again, unless I can hear a convincing reason why that doesn't make sense, but I just wanted to put that on the record.
what about if that were just limited to the required increase in a contribution to the pension plan? If you want to get us to 100%.
Right,
What if,
I absolutely do.
I understand.
Then we have to talk about what we're bonding though too.
So I do think there is, I hear you, like, I would much rather not issue $24 million in bonds and increase, I mean, I'd be more about increasing property tax, and I think that's your point, rather than leveraging a really high debt right now, a high rate on debt. I'd be more in favor of increasing property tax and doing that. And I also want to pay that, because it's the same difference. I mean, this is all debt we're talking about at high rates, whether it's the $240 million on police and fire or $24 million in CIP bonds. I'm more in favor of that.
We're missing the critical piece that you said a while ago is
Right.
what's necessity,
Exactly.
what we don't, once we get, that's
I
the
mean,
piece that
When
we
you
need
sit here
to
and you
figure
go through
that
this,
out.
and I don't know what you all have talked about in council, but as a community member, I would say seeing things like, you want to do another $2.5 million on that, or $2.4 million on that fountain? No. You guys have
I mean,
already
that's
spent
half the money we could give to the.
well, that's already,
Right.
you've already spent $7 million, why can't you wait till the lawsuit's over? And then, I'm sorry, this dog shelter for $6 or $7 million, it feels like Crown Part 2. You know, and Laura Biggs and I, Clayton and Bobby, you were at a meeting recently where she talked about the fact that when we did Crown, it was just this small group of people who completely drove that project, and she just was taking direction. And it feels to me like, okay, again, we've got some small group of people driving an enormous project we have no business building, particularly in a year where we're going into a recession. Why would we bond for that right now? And you know, if you look at lakefront properties that are 11,000 square feet, they're going for what you're talking about building that silly self-shelter for. And the community, I think, you know, in the main communities, like they hear, okay, we're building a dog shelter, great, we like dogs, we all do. But when it's like, okay, but it's at the expense of funding the pensions, it's at this and this, you know, I think most people would just be happy with the dog beach.
And they'd be happier not to have an increase.
And they would be happier not to have issuing bonds, 30-year bonds, and with 20-year bonds.
So I think we can all, there's a couple things we desperately need.
Yeah.
One is 17 years from now, to be in a much better funded
Yes, we
pension
do.
Yes.
position.
100%.
Yes.
And because that's been the ball and chain over the last 20 years.
And we're not alone, I mean, I think
Well, I
that's.
want
You know,
Can I say one thing? And that, when the state made that law, it was for like cities that are struggling, and we just latched on to it. I mean, it wasn't made for everyone.
yeah.
Okay.
But how do we make sure that happens, right? How do we make sure that we have, and I understand the goal of flat property taxes, but if we just try to hold property taxes flat, then we're going to end up reducing the available money for the city as pension increases. So just
think
put out
those
there,
are
at least,
palatable,
property taxes
David,
went
but
up.
when you
based
see
on the actual
frivolous,
return.
when you see
Go
stuff
on.
like this, you just want to go, are you out of your mind?
Who approves like the shelter and the fountain?
Right.
The
I
city
mean,
council.
City
It's
council,
driven by
the
staff.
city council
It's
has
driven
approved
by
the dog
staff.
shelter, and that was the direction the council gave to staff on the
Right.
fountain, was to budget
No,
for
we
fixing
didn't.
it,
No,
right?
we didn't. We didn't.
You did.
We did not. We did not. We were in session. We said, do not spend, I very much, Tom Stuff and I both said, not $1 on repairs for that fountain. We made that very clear, but staff went ahead and published, oh, we spent 5.9.
I mean,
Yeah, no, we never gave them direction to spend any money because we're in a lawsuit right now. It's in my ward. So I'm just saying. So there has never been direction. Many of this, I mean, we got $2 million from the county for example, for the animal shelter. $2 million is a lot of money. Nobody ever said we want a 400 per square foot shelter. That was staff's idea. I just felt like a lot of this is not being driven by council or by residents. It's coming to us, and we really need to, staff needs to understand, like, we have to serve the residents here and tighten our belts next year. Everybody's going to be doing that. Our residents are going to be doing that. So yes, I agree with you, David. I don't mind like raising taxes if we're not leveraging crazy, ridiculously rated debt, and if we're now finally moving towards a better place on our pension. That's okay with me. What is not okay with me is just spending on CIP projects that are not something we really need next year, or we scale it back to something that's reasonable. That's what we have to do for the residents. We're here for the residents. We're not here for construction.
So before this budget is finally approved, it sounds like we have a big need to make sure we have properly prioritized the capital budget.
Yes.
And I think we can conclude right now, there's probably some points that need to be really vetted and
100%.
discussed on some of these major projects. And we might need to be realistic about what is the right pension contribution going forward, and schedule that and understand how that's going to play out over the next 17 years based on the current actuarial assumptions. Those are two big things. What are the right capital projects? What are our projected pension contributions?
And what's
And
the
then
process
finally-
of deciding the right capital projects?
But
Is
to
that
be
council?
clear, the capital projects aren't really expenditure. Even if we were to nix most of the capital projects, it actually wouldn't impact because this is all borrowed money, right? It's not like we're actually taking money from our balance, our current balance, and spending it on these capital projects. We are borrowing money, and that money is being directly allocated and spent in this year, but we're really not paying that money back in
But
this
then the
year.
interest on it.
But it won't impact next year, would it? I
This is what
mean,
Laura Biggs said to me at the meeting we had. She said, I said, how did you even project? How did you even pick? And she said, well, 10 million would roll off the balance sheet, we kind of roll 10 million on. It's like, okay, well, you're rolling on at 7 and you're rolling off at 3. This has got to be looked at council. This is your responsibility as council members to really take a red pen and look at these projects and say, do we want to bond out at twice? I mean, interest rates are twice as high. So whatever you say you're funding right now, you better be ready to.
yeah, no, I get you there. That's totally a valid thing. My point is, the conversation as I heard it was, if we get rid of some of these capital projects, we won't have to raise property taxes.
No, we're not saying that at all.
No, that's
We're
not-
saying we're not going to
If
bond.
we're going to raise them, we're going to raise them for the right reasons.
Yeah.
But
we're gonna
even
raise
raising
that-
the property
We don't want to
taxes,
go out with $24 million of new bonds. at 7%.
Right, when we're not even fully, we're not fully, when I say fully funding, I mean the 10% interest. When we're not fully funding,
So
it's
does-
fire and pension, we don't want to
Is
do
the
that.
idea that we would raise property taxes to make a larger pension contribution? Like what is because I can't hear people like that.
Yes, that's the idea. Can we create a dedicated revenue source, which is we will dedicate property tax increases to make sure we're on the path to this 90 or 100% funding by 2040? I agree, 100 is better than 90. But how do we make sure this doesn't crowd everything out?
It has
What
to be
is-
part of the budget.
And I think that Jason needs to show us, what is that path? What do the contributions need to be, based upon where we are today?
Well, he didn't say 4.5 this year.
Okay, yeah, so what the assets are this today, this is where we want to be in 2040, this is how we project the liabilities. He can also then project for us, this is what I think that, based on all these assumptions, the contributions are going to need to be by.
But one thing which we have to remember, everyone, and like that's where I think I talked to you, and maybe the pension obligation part, is a constantly changing number every day.
Exactly.
Depending the
And you
market,
redo it next
depending
time
on
you
the
do it.
retirement,
Right, so
disability,
it's gonna be a
new.
lot.
So it's not that, okay, like suppose if city gives today 150 million to the both pension funds and say, okay, we are good, no. Next year, if the market loses 10%, we still
What
have,
happened when
we
there
need
was
to
the big
read-
surplus last year?
I
Did
know,
that up?
that should have rolled in.
What happened, like when the market was up so much last year?
And I don't know if it's empty, I did it over
okay.
time.
So
And,
what
we got
happens
down,
is-
we got to 62% funding.
Right.
I think we're like back to 52 or something of that nature.
so that's where
Did
it
get
happens,
better.
yes. When the market grows up, it stays within the pension. We cannot take it out even if we want. We have no control. Remember this, city council does not have any control. It is the pension board, and even now investing side, for at least the fire, it is centralized. So even the fire pension board doesn't have a control to how to invest that fund.
So,
Yeah.
well, we decided what we're our contributions. So I think,
Yes.
like,
That's the only thing we have control, is
Yeah,
how much we contribute.
right.
and by the way, if we're going with
Exactly.
the 6.5, it would be at 4.3. At 6, and assuming we're just going to go with the 6.5, it's 4.3. At 6.25, it would be 4.6.
I have another question, and this came up during our meeting. The maintenance of every building, we don't seem to have any records, is that correct?
That's
for
correct.
the what we've spent on maintaining buildings?
I
Right.
don't know that part. I mean,
Yeah,
I have
no,
to check with either Lara or
And
even,
who's responsible for that? So as an example, when we first projected expenses relating to running Crown, everybody, or at least several of us in the room said, it's way too low. And we kept, oh, no, it's just fine. It's, 4 times as much, and it's a big, fat number. Who's responsible for that?
I mean, again, it's a different departments, like suppose if you are talking about Crown, it's a combination of the Parks and Recreation, any Parks and Recreation. So whether it's Parks, and they work with, if it's
It
the
would be good
capital,
to get, because I know there's, movement afoot on some of the buildings. I want to know what it costs to maintain.
I mean,
So
you,
I can tell you, I did have a meeting about maintenance with our maintenance people, and they said that they do not have any records of maintenance on facilities beyond 6 months. And
So we don't know how much it costs to run all.
is it for any building or just the Robert?
For all the 60 facilities, they said,
They
there are
have
no
to.
records.
It's gonna
No,
have-
I know, I said, there's a legal issue here. This has been a big problem. This has become a big issue at our city.
I doubt, I can't say
They
anything,
said
but yes,
because
I
they
doubt.
switched systems, they lost it, and I said, well, do you have some papers and drawers somewhere? And it was kind of.
They
a
may
issue.
not-
Maybe we keep going through this, but I
Yeah.
can just summarize to the two
Yeah, we're
major
going
things
off
so
track.
far.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, let's move on.
Capital project priorities,
next slide.
dedicated pension funding, and what's the right number.
Okay.
That's primarily what's
Yeah.
coming out so far. And I think we need to talk about wage increases.
Right, so I think, right, I mean, we've
This is
talked
the
about
next one?
properly prioritizing our CIP, but also just our prioritization when we spend tax dollars. And I think we're all agreeing here that we want to fund our police and fire protection. Is anybody,
Okay, so I would move along and then again, time permitting, as the chair says, this is the kind of like property tax rate I compared with some of the other neighboring communities. Average composite rate as a percentage of the EAV. So Evanston is at 8.169. This is last year because we don't have the data, the latest data from Cook County. Skokie is at 9.284. Wilmette is 7.895% of the EAV. Morton Grove 9.72. Lincolnwood at 8.84 and Niles at 8.201. So these are the rates, and obviously each P number could have a different rate. If you are in Morton Grove but you have a Niles Park District versus Morton Grove Park District, the rate could change a little bit, depending on the same thing in the school district. But this is the average composite rate. I got it from the Cook County report. So these are the property tax rates.
Is it just the city rate?
No, overall.
Overall rate, okay.
Yes.
And that will fundamentally change going forward, right? Because the value is now more a percentage of the actual property value rather than the equalized.
Right, so,
It's not like people are not paying 8% of their property value here. They are,
No, not
the South
8%
Suburbs
of the
are
property value.
Right,
8%
but I think
of the
going
equalized
forward-
assessed value. And equalized assessed value is you take your value and then assessed value. So like suppose your residential house, and it's the market value, 300,000, 10% is the Cook County rate. So 30,000 becomes your assessed value. Then that 30,000 is multiplied by what we call an equalizer, which is determined by the state government. And generally it runs around 300,000, So then it becomes 90,000 is the EAV. And 90,000 you pay 8% of 90,000. That becomes your tax. And this is again before any exemptions and whatnot, seniors or homeowners and whatnot.
So they're all high, as a matter of fact. I mean,
Right, all high,
They're
yes.
all high, and we should be
Right. I mean, except the
focused
lowest
as much
one
as
is go back.
possible.
The
on
lowest
it,
one is, I think, the
but it's not like we're an
Wilmette.
outlier.
Yeah, Wilmette is below 8%, yeah, at 7.895%. Okay, let's go on.
But that's 2020, yeah.
This is the impact about the tax levy increase. This is they always ask for about, so we put that out even in the budget summary, that if it's a home worth 100,000, the increase in the $21, 200,000, 43, 300,000, 64, and likewise. This is the dollar which we kind of, at least this is very useful at the ward meeting, because so many times people think it is the city which takes away all the money of our property tax. The city's share is only 17%. The school districts, I think, mainly almost 66 to 70%, both combined, school district 65 and ETHS, so it's roughly
But
two-thirds
a
of.
fundamental difference is that they are capped. They raise either CIP or 5%, whichever is lower, and that's the dollar.
And the new well
Whereas
construction
we've had
too.
years where it's raised 19%. We've had levy increase of 19%. School districts could never do that, so there's a little bit of safety net there for the school district. It's up to us. We are the safety net, right here.
Right, I mean, they are under PTEL, so they have to cap it their rate
At the
increase.
lower amount.
Right. And they can add the value of the new construction. So at least they have that flexibility. So this is the assumed rate of return. Now coming back to the pensions, and I'm 6.5 used by Evanston, Illinois Department of Insurance, which kind of calculates their own report, and they are using 6.5. And then I have some of the other communities, Bartlett, Schaumburg, Woodridge, Algonquin, Elgin, Elgrove, Warrenville. You would see that, and I think I talked to Jason a couple of years back when we were kind of looking at it, that 70% of the communities use in Illinois 7 or higher.
That's
Right. It's,
And the big
not-
killer there is it's not so much the assumed rate of return on the assets, it's the discount rate on the liabilities.
Right.
That is, so it even starts off sort of framed
Right.
the wrong way.
And
The higher that number, the more you're
and you
pushing
would be
off
surprised,
contributions in the future.
David, Andy, that particularly like the fire pension now being consolidated. So some of those fire pension funds and cities, they are considering up the rate because now they think that they would make a higher rate, by consolidation of all these investments. So
I don't understand why their assumed rate of return then should not come from the consolidated fund. They should not have, it should be, this is what the assumed rate of return is, because I assume that all those assets are similarly invested.
right.
So to give,
I wouldn't, can we anticipate that to change going forward?
Yeah, some of
The
the firemen-
centralization of the fund management?
I mean, we'll have to see. This is still like a first year, and even police is not part of that. They are subject to a pending litigation. So the fire pension has transferred their assets.
Yeah.
Are they at the Illinois State Board of Assessors?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that,
'cause-
Illinois
yeah, I was on that
Firefighters
board,
Investment
so,
Pool.
yeah. They use 7, I think they use 7 or
Right.
7.25.
But we want to see the actual return. The first year, they're
But
okay.
they actually have done pretty well.
So that is expected to.
Oh, let's see-
and it
see
will
what
increase
happens
with
this
fire.
Right. We'll have to see this. This is first year with the fire consolidation.
Yeah.
So we'll see the
But at some point in the future, every
Oh, yeah.
municipality is going to be assuming the same rate.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
at some point it should be like
Total
that.
number to
Right.
assume.
If they are
They're
part of.
so unfunded, the state pensions, so
I don't know if they're fundamentally different.
they don't have any
than us.
hope getting them.
Yeah.
Let's do the next. Yeah, the water sanitation rate, minor increase in that. You see the $13 per year or $2.20 for bi-monthly, and the 1.8% increase to the solid waste fee, where we say that, okay, still, I think even 23, we expect the solid waste fund to be in red, in spite of $1 million and the levy of 1.3 million. But I think I was working with Dave Stonebeck, I think in next 2 years, we hope to have it in black so that, I mean, this is an enterprise fund, and this is one of the questions asked by the rating agency, that why it's have a negative fund balance, and I'm like, yes, it's easier to say that, yeah, I can just raise the rates, either by tax levy or user fees, but sometimes it's tough to just kind of raise that revenue to match the expenses. This is what we talked about pretty much, yeah. No, let's go to this one. Yeah, you want to cover that, so I'll take a break.
Yeah, Tesh talked a little bit about the new positions that are proposed in the budget. There's 39, including 22 and a half in the general fund. I suspect these will be kind of topic of conversation over the next couple months as department directors are at city council meetings. Many of these are recommended by the Baker-Tilly study that the city council reviewed in early September. 4 of the 22 and a half in the general fund are recommended by Baker-Tilly. Other ones are 7 firefighter, paramedics, and a fire captain. The goal of those positions is to be able to expand to a 3rd ambulance and to supervise the lifeguard operations on the beaches. Community development has a few positions as well to help with permit services, residential plan review, and then positions like the grants officer and city manager's office. That's an expense, so we budgeted the expense for that position, but the hope would be that position goes out, captures grants, and helps pay for themselves. We don't budget the revenues for a position like that, just the expense. Several positions in admin services as well.
So can you, which ones did, what was that firm? How many did they recommend?
Baker-Tilly.
How many new positions?
Incremental.
So they recommended, I believe, 12 or 14?
13, I think.
13?
13 new positions?
13?
Or actually added?
Overall, yeah.
So they recommended 13, and we are recommending 7 of the 13 that they recommended. We are moving forward, and then we're recommending 39 total positions.
Do they do
So
a
this is
lot
not
of municipalities, so they have a lot to compare?
Yeah, a lot of experience, so they, yeah.
So,
I mean,
So this
that's
is not a
national
comprehensive
level.
list of the 39.
The others are here on the second
Bigger
list.
bill,
so they recommended 13.
The ones with the asterisks are the ones they recommended on that list.
Yep.
And then, so the ones that don't have are new positions
Should we go to the
that
second
are
page
beyond
of
that
positions?
the city
Yes.
wants to add? Or
Yes.
these are not positions held vacant, correct?
Correct. These are additional positions. Some of them are restored positions from pre-pandemic. I think positions like the digital services specialist and maybe the tech support specialist were positions that existed
So
pre-COVID.
they are positions that were held vacant.
They were eliminated during COVID.
We
And now
eliminated
we're-
like digital services in 2021 budget or 22 budget, and now we are bringing it back.
So, and how do we, is there any thoughts like that Baker-Tilly didn't recommend these? But, I'm just curious, because we paid a lot of money to this firm.
I mean, this would be a more conversation at the city manager level. They had a series of meetings, Dave Stoneback and Luke Stowe, with each department directors and managers. And obviously, I think the list was longer than this. And then I think, obviously, we pushed it on our side from the number side that, okay, we can't do that. Maybe we can stretch out over the next year or two. And I think they have a second round, third round. I don't know how many, but yeah, what
So just to
conversation went
understand, so
on.
Baker-Tilly recommended 13, but we're adding, the proposal here is for 39.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay.
Yes. Also worth mentioning, of the 39, 7 of them were approved by City Council earlier this year in the Water Fund for the lead service line replacement program, and that's what that 5% fee increase is paying for, those 7 positions. So technically, there's 32 positions that the City Council hasn't seen yet that are being included in this budget.
Okay. So like Baker-Tilly would have seen those 5 positions when they were privy to those,
The 5 positions,
from the water.
7.
I'm sorry.
They would have seen those probably in their study.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is there a write-up somewhere that goes through sort of why these positions are being added individually?
Yeah, it's the
That-
memos
that
we have
everyone could
posted
look-
here.
Okay, it's the memos. So look at the memos, it'll
Go to this
say.
page, the budget page, right here, department budget request memos. We outline every position and why it's being requested and what it'll do.
It does concern me a little bit that we hired from, they're saying 13, but we're going with 32. Every position is so expensive. I don't have issues with my salaries, but I do, I'm really analyzing carefully the additional positions This
And
is
that's
the
why
difference of 13 versus 32, pay the firm, and they say 13.
we put the
Because
memos
if I
out
had said,
there.
oh, that's great,
for
we
each
can't
position.
afford it,
So
but
we
we
can
said, oh,
look at
great, we'll go 3 times higher.
And again, as a finance officer, I don't want to weigh in and fires, tell them, no, you don't need captain, but you need this, or parks recreation, you don't need this manager. I mean,
Yeah,
you know,
why
I
don't we
mean,
pay-
they know their operation, so,
Why don't you pay-
And
why
one more,
don't you pay a
one more
firm
thing
to come
too.
Analyze everything and then not
They-
go with their recommendation.
They didn't look at police and fire
Yeah, they
either.
did
So
not look at
the
police
8
and
positions recommended in fire,
Okay.
they wouldn't
say
have
that
hit
They
those.
they didn't do public
They
safety.
They didn't look
We
at
didn't
So
have
public
how
safety.
many of those positions are there?
There's 8 of those. 7 new firefighters and 1 fire captain.
Okay,
That
so
we'll be
8
budgeting
months,
for.
13.
So we're
However,
still at 15 versus 32.
right, however, we don't anticipate filling all of those public safety positions.
all right, police, yeah, I mean, the way it is tough, so even though we are bringing to back police, I don't think we will even, maybe we could reach a 60, 70%, yeah. And unless, assuming that no one leaves from the current workforce, yeah.
Yeah, so I would, if I could just, so next year, so that we're not just sort of reacting, I would hope like, and David, see what you think, that in July or August, that you all would come here and we would plan to sort of give direction for things like, say, the pension, and then you would come back having incorporated some of these suggestions. Does that sound about right, like July, August? I think so.
Or at
that-
least if we had a bit more time than we're gonna end up with now, right? I mean, it would be great if
But
we had had this
So
conversation a
is this
month
going to
ago. so we
council,
could
the
go back and
budget? Because
forth.
I feel like we have
It
so
already
many.
did.
Right, so
questions.
it is going to the council not for approval, for discussion for the next 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, I
We
guess
have a month or two to sort of, and that should be enough time, right? If we just try to stay high level and
So
say
let's,
these are
should we
areas that we want to
prioritize
focus
what
on.
information we want?
Yeah,
Because I feel like all of us have different,
right, but I'm just saying
Pop
overall,
up.
more globally for next year, though, we would say time first. We said, okay, we discussed and we gave some global direction. There wouldn't be as much like, sort of, things would be a little bit more in line with expectations. I just think the order of events should go first, get informed, like we would inform some basic guidance, then you come back and we say, okay, that's incorporated. That's what I do with all.
I mean,
the
that's
developments.
our
That's
kind
what I do with
of,
all big developments in my work. They meet with the community first before they even submit their application, and then they're more in line with what the community wants. And I think that just, because this is all new, I know finance and budget, last year was the first year for this, so I would ask that before a proposed budget is created.
Sort of a principles document,
Yeah.
what we're
Right.
trying to do.
Exactly.
but I really thank you for doing all these 5-year
Yeah.
projections because I think it'll make it easier next year because we can kind of look at the projection and see.
right,
How
now we
close you
will have
are.
the model, and even, I want to see that, we were talking as a budget team, that, okay, we will keep this model, and we'll see after 6 months or a year, how does it look based on some of the actual numbers, like on expense side. We would have the union contracts done.
Right.
So some of the revenues we will update. And we will
Constantly
see, yeah, that how that, okay, how does it look when we did the first time, we were here, and how does it look now? So that would be a, kind of good exercise,
So I'm just trying to summarize, the 2 big priorities I see is A, to review the capital improvements, what's must, what's maybe, what we can wait, and then really decide as a group on how much we're gonna fund the pensions. Are those like the 2,
To
And
balance.
then
things.
3, I think there's 16 versus 20%.
the 16 versus 20%, but I think we've kind of,
We've settled that, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, we're starting, even with this degree of sort of what I would call somewhat deficit spending next year, because we're using up some, we're still gonna be over 20%. Right.
Yeah, we could see
It's
that.
not like we're dipping below,
No,
right?
right.
Even with this, we are
Yeah, but
still
what is the
above even
projection?
the
Yeah.
revised
We will be.
target, right? I think it really becomes more serious when we are saying, do we want to hold it?
But are we comfortable
Because some of this stuff I don't
passing
agree with,
deficits?
right? I mean, this stuff shouldn't really happen to this degree, right? These are deficits.
Like, I'm not
Right, those are all
comfortable
deficits.
with a deficit of,
But how do we start working on that and understand the numbers better so that this does not,
You're right.
Right, but
these
I also-
numbers are less, and so we remain closer to 20 years.
But we have to understand the context, and as you mentioned before, the permit fees from the new Ryan
Yeah,
Stadium
it's
are
not
going to
there.
come 24, 25.
Yeah, suddenly
we don't
it
know.
could range, like suppose if we come to know,
do we
Yes,
know, we don't have an estimate of that.
no.
We also
10 million is
have a full
what I heard.
account, so-
Yes, we,
Right.
Don't-
10.
Yeah, but I still don't see the surplus.
We're not saying the surplus is not really accounted for.
Right, so that wipes out 2 years of deficit.
There's,
And David, how
the
do you
surplus
see
is
this
shown
breaking up
here.
the balance?
This is
Right.
the
Yeah.
21
Well,
surplus.
that's another point too, right? If there's a year,
I'm like such a popular man.
if there is a year to figure out how we can hold less cash to avoid holding so much debt, it is this year because we don't want to issue debt,
That's
Yes.
it?
Got that?
right? So this is the year to say we have 60 million in cash. How do we make that 40? So we avoid 20 million of debt issuance. How do we shrink, our net debt number, maybe that stays about the same, but how do we shrink the total cash so we avoid issuing incremental debt?
And if you see that based on this committee's direction, I mean, first time in many years, we haven't issued the bonds, and we won't be issuing any bonds most likely in 22.
But I think that's some really strong direction that I think we're giving tonight. So I
This
like
was
that.
very helpful for me. Thank you.
So we can look at positions, can we tie, let's get current calculations of where we are on pension funding and a goal at 90 or a goal at 100 and understand what that does to require contributions for next year. And is that an acceptable increase in property taxes? Maybe that's the only increase in
But
property
it's
taxes.
with the CIP, right?
But David, I don't know if I agree at a point in time, because if we were at 63% last year and we're at 50, like, I kind of feel, I don't want to constrain us too much. I almost think that,
I would like to know what they're using as their assumed asset
Yes,
value.
okay.
And if they're using an asset value that's higher than what reality is today,
Okay.
let's go with reality today.
Yeah, 100%.
Because we had made a lot of progress, but this bad year sort of forces you back. Back. Let's take all the built-in optimism out of those pension
Right.
out of those pension calculations.
but maybe we go to 92 or 93 instead of the full,
Well, and that's the goal for.
I think, as you were
Yeah.
saying, putting us on a path toward.
half.
Yeah, that's our glide path to be at either 90 or 100% by 2030. But where are we today and what does that mean? We have to contribute, and Jason can tell us that. He can give us all those contributions so we could see, does this end up with a reasonable level of increase in property taxes if we have to raise as the contribution number goes up?
But so what you got today, I mean, this
Yeah.
original report, it is based on 90%, 2040.
Right, this is 90%. That's my point. We gotta start paying on that remaining $24 million. Is that 10%? We're not paying interest on. I mean, just do it now. And this is not.
Okay,
looking
so
good.
these are some of the positions in the other funds, fleet,
And
sustainability.
I think, council members, I think you need to hold staff very accountable. If you're going to go over and above from the study that you paid these consultants to do, I would really make them justify those incremental positions. I mean, not fire and et cetera, but, and police, but the other ones,
15 positions.
Did they maybe just give you senior positions, or they gave you all the positions?
they look at everything.
Everything, I mean, you would see the description of positions too on the right side. Like some of those, you see the basic in water, inspectors, crew leaders, water workers.
So again, I think it goes back to want to have versus have to have. This is going to be that kind of year.
I think that some of the positions that are requested, and that'll be discussed with City Council, is literally to address priorities that the City Council has put on them too. So that's these positions, things like the sustainability positions, the workforce development positions in human services, some of the positions in community development to help with permit operations and residential plan review.
Right.
I think those are being proposed as part of this budget to start to make progress in some of those things the
And I
council's
think
identified.
council's going to have to
If council
really justify
says
this.
Right,
if they
right.
back
I mean,
off.
we want to do it, but maybe in 2 years.
Because this is what we heard when
Yeah.
we sat down with each department, and I'm like, why you need this position, why you need that, and they say, we just heard this complaint or request from council member, we got to have this kind of service level, we have to have a permit done in this
It's
many.
ultimately council's call.
Right, but the problem is too, we don't really have great metrics.
And that's why we say that the council will have plenty of time over the next 6 to 8 weeks, kind of hear, look at the memos, talk about, we go to the ward meetings, have the community input too, and finally I make the decision of the budget.
Can you quantify each position so the
Yeah.
council knows?
It is there.
Including benefits and everything.
Yep.
Those are, that's all outlined in the memos.
That's in the memos?
Can you
Okay.
show us how you're addressing the fact that it's unlikely we'll hire all the vacancies?
So we have adjusted that 2%, what is that?
I don't think you mentioned that on that slide.
Oh, no, okay, so if you see the highlighted thing, 2% vacancy adjustment of $1.5 million. Now in normal year, it could be like too aggressive, and why I tell you. Like if someone leaves and say, okay, it took us 3 months to hire someone else. So now I can say, okay, we saved the salary for 2 months, 3 months. Some of the things upsetting cost are the vacation payout. In police and fire, there is a sick payout. And sometimes when people leave with 15, 20, 25 years of service, it's the huge payout.
But here's, what is it this year?
But let me just be clear here, that vacancy adjustment is not something that has ever been in a previous budget.
No.
This is new for this
New
year.
one.
Right, so this is an attempt to make sure that our budget is closer to reality.
Yes.
Since we know we're not going to fulfill hire all of it.
And are we currently at 5% vacancy rate?
We're sitting at 40
So you guys
positions
need-
right now.
40 out of that, so it would be
40
like
out of 800.
800, yeah, so it's like.
We're at about 5%. So I think you might have some cushion there too, right? If we're
Right.
currently sitting at 5 and we've budgeted that, maybe we can get to 2 by the end of the year, but it might be 4 to 3 to 2, so maybe that number should be 3.
And we would hear
Right,
the
it's a
council.
judgmental number.
I mean, I would, in that case, because it suddenly, if I go over and the council say, okay, then what kind of planning you did? If council directs me that you just put that 3%, the one thing is, we are in the transition mode to hire more and more people, like post-COVID in 21, 22, and 23. So, yes, that's why I cannot compare with the vacancies in 21 or 22 even in the beginning, you know. I mean, even we have filled so many positions
But
during
this
this
isn't
year.
aggressive, is the point, that this really
It's
is
not
an
aggressive.
aggressive number.
It could be 2.5.
Right.
2.5,
I
yeah.
would say
It's
increase
conservative,
that.
right?
Right.
I would say
It is,
increase
yes.
that to 2.5.
But
Yeah.
it's a judgmental call
Right.
for you to get comfortable with.
Right.
But if we're currently at 5, I don't think next year ends up with an average of 2.
Right. I
We
mean,
might
you're
get
right.
to 2 by the end of the year.
I can, yeah.
So
I mean, I
that's
can make
probably
it 2.5% and say, yep, extra, you know, 1/4 of that. So, yeah, around 400,000.
The larger
So
the
get to a
salary
$2 million,
increase, the more
yeah.
good
What
it
about
is.
open positions? Do you have a list of the open positions? Someone needs to revalidate that all the open positions actually need to get filled.
We,
I think that's the 40
right,
kinda
the 40
talking about,
positions
the 40
which is talking
vacancies that are-
right now.
23 in police, most of it's in police.
Yeah,
a
it's the
good chunk
police.
of it's in parks and rec, with the other ones kind of one-offs here and there.
So I think that's another point too, is having someone consciously say, of all the 40 needs to be added.
But again,
I'm not saying they don't, but I'm saying, there might be.
and Parks and Recreation have hired some of them
They've started
recently.
hiring now. They've
Yeah,
gotten
so
through some
there,
vacancies.
when I see new faces and they say, I mean, I see a new hiring in community development, so some of those things, the vacancies has gone down. And by the end time we reach the 22, I think, yeah, we would have some of those positions. The biggest one is the police department. But some of the things like, I don't know whether it's the public information, but now we have the, what do you call it, incentive for the new police officer. And which would offset some of those vacancies.
In retention bonuses, is that?
Not the retention, for the
So
new
sign-on
employee,
bonus.
hiring
Oh,
bonus,
sorry.
signing bonus.
How much is the uncertainty in the contract negotiations going to come into play at some point down the road here?
I mean, here's the thing, I mean, I'm against nothing, but like when 2020 happened and we asked the other unions, you know, the city manager reached out for the furloughed and others, police and fire said no. Fire said we will defer until the next year our increase is. Police said no, we won't give anything in. So what happened is non-union people and AFSCME initially took the 10 furlough days to kind of cut down and help.
But my point is, we don't know what the new contracts are going to say.
Yeah,
You assumed a 4%, was it 4%
we have
increase?
4.5%.
I
Now,
think it's safe to say the new contracts are not going to be any lower than 4%.
I think the concern will be they'll see this and know that's the starting point for the conversations as well.
Right, so I think we can anticipate, if anything else.
particularly I'm concerned on the public safety side, police officer.
But how does that impact these numbers? Like, we know that the contracts are going to come in probably higher than what we're budgeting.
Right.
That's the practical reality. So we know that 117,839 is probably going to be higher, or I'm not sure where it would
Yeah,
be
well,
reflected if it's
This
in
is the
the
4.5%
salary
amount.
increase right there.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's probably going to be higher.
Yeah,
that's
maybe
what
it's
the-
funded by the vacancy. Right, maybe that's 4.
Right, so let's.
I think we considered that when we set the vacancy at 2, too. We were
Yeah.
wrestling that number as well.
with the sign-in bonus and all that, and even here the other communities, yeah, it's like a fighting for that position
Yeah.
and giving higher rates and even keeping as a retention, as you said, kind of a, what do you call, caving into the union demand, so that okay, we will be able to keep the police force. So yeah, you're right. We could have a 6% increase settled there once it's all said and done.
But we might not agree to, there's all these additional positions.
Right.
So I just want to make sure that what we're talking about tonight, that this is presented when you come to council. So that what we're saying this evening isn't just like us talking here, but that this is also reflected when you come to council on Monday the 17th. So for example, we should have those CIPs, that absolutely necessary, we could do this, we could do without. We need that. We want that for, we're directing you for council to bring that forward. We also want to see, I'm going to just go to 4.3. So we are funding at 90%. But if anyway, so David, you want to see something where between 90 and 100? Is that
why don't, I was thinking I could take, look, we can't do everything, and I was thinking I would come up with what I think are the 5 or 6 major items that we've talked about tonight that we would ask for additional discussion on, right? And we can all agree maybe what those are. We can't hit you with 100 items, I understand that, right? But, a schedule of pension contributions, reprioritization of the major capital projects, how do we shrink the cash that we're holding, just some major themes that came out. We can all agree on really just the
probably not more than 5.
The major items that we think could make a difference on this budget. Because this isn't every year thing. 5-10 years from now, hopefully it'll be a whole lot better. But right now, how do we make a lot of incremental progress on the really important items for this budget? And what are those? And let's boil those down to a few areas that we would want to discuss with you further. Now, someone had brought up the idea that can we have another meeting in a couple weeks, or do we wait? I don't know. Or we communicate
council
through
would be
email.
really grateful to say, okay, we met with finance and budget.
Yeah.
Here are at least a couple of these items would be nice for Monday that's reflected from this. Maybe not all 5, but for example, whether it's the CIP, which I requested a while ago, or it's the 16 versus 20% reserve. But at least a couple of items right now, and then I agree we can look for more, and I think we should be meeting more during budget season more than once a month. So, but I think at least have something brought forward to City Council on Monday from this meeting. Something.
Like, what's your bandwidth to work on, like, as an example, the pension? Trying to get together. Do you have any?
I turned to Hitzesh.
Right. I mean, when you say having the extra meeting, or in that sense you are telling me?
To run numbers on pension.
I think we should come up with the 3 to 5 priorities now, because if we wait, David, by the time you get into so, and then we can see what their bandwidth is to get the answers, so.
So maybe we can work over the next few days amongst ourselves. What do we think the highest priority is?
Can't we do that right
I
now?
think we kind of know.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, so at least we
We
get
just
some.
said 'em.
okay.
Or
Well,
at least it's identifiable.
Right. I think I had one this first one I turned into an email. I don't agree that's what it is. Okay, it's how do we minimize bonding by minimize cash? How do we reevaluate the 39 positions, the pension funding, give us a couple of schedules of 90 to 100 by 2040, given where we are today. Well, I'd like to see what those contributions are by year, so we could, on the path to 2040, so we know, are we creating a bomb in property taxes if that's what we have to raise property taxes by, or is it kind of flat?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it goes up with, I don't know. I don't know
But
how
once
to
we
do.
determine that number, at least, and it'll fluctuate from year to year, and if that's part of our integrated into our budget, then we are appropriately more assessing our other expenditures. Because if this is something we say absolutely we're moving towards, it's really important because that becomes that line item. That's a no, like we don't bargain on that. That goes in there. We're paying at this percent, whether it's I would say at 100. And then we appropriately assess, we can afford this year, we can. But I think this is an item that's really important that we start to...
Yeah, we need to come up with the 2 or 3 or 4 today, because if you send an email, we can't respond with the open meetings.
So I think what you
just
said
because
is
it's
right.
going
I think
up,
what you
we
said,
can't
you just,
respond.
the capital, I would
I don't know.
also just add
I don't
the
know if
capital
we can.
improvement.
You can to the
Yeah,
chair.
I don't want to
Yeah.
just see us talk about reducing
Okay,
cash.
so let me
Can
send
you
something
respond?
out. tomorrow. I mean, it's pension funding, it's open positions, it's bonding, it is prioritization of CIP, of capital projects.
And it's the reserve fund.
And it's, again,
I'd like to clarify the capital project prioritization. What we really mean there is GO bond funded capital projects.
Right, not
Right.
in the, like, when we have the water fund or sewer fund.
right.
Tax supported debt.
Right, that are by the
Right, we got $40 million IEPA loan, but we're not worried about that one.
Right.
We're not talking
Tax
about that.
supported.
We're only talking about Bill bonds.
Got it. Okay. So I will turn something around if people want to respond to
But
me.
can we respond with everyone else?
I don't-
You can respond.
Maybe just respond to me.
Just
I
to
think you
me?
can respond to me.
BCC everybody.
You can be.
Okay, if you BCC us, and then we can respond to you, and then you'll, yeah, I just remember from my other board, it was huge.
Oh, fine. Okay.
And then
And
surplus,
I
a
think
better
the
accounting.
surplus issue, I think, becomes, that's more of a down the road, are we prepared to take it below 20? Because I think regardless of what we do next year, we will be above 20. It's not that first year of the deficit that takes us from wherever we are today to below 20. It is, we're going to stay.
And the last thing is, are we gonna meet on November 8th? Because I think we need to decide so we can publish if there's a different meeting date.
I mean, I can make that, I just thought, given the group.
That's a regular meeting, right?
It's
Yeah.
a regular meeting, it's just election day.
Oh, that's
Can we do the 25th?
I won't be
We're all
in
gonna
town.
be watching the midterms.
Right, and we have a term
Maybe it's a
like,
quicker meeting.
we
I don't know.
already have
Can we-
like a
I don't mind
11/8 or
I don't mind
11/7,
being
whatever it is.
Or
I mean,
maybe we
still
start
meet
at
then,
5 or 5:30.
because the
Can we meet at 5 o'clock? What if we meet
Yeah,
at
let's
5
meet at
o'clock?
5.
Let's just meet at 5 o'clock on that day.
And then we'll
Be
be
done
done
by
by
6:30.
6.
On 11,
On the 8th.
okay,
But are we
good.
gonna meet in 2 weeks also?
No.
I think we should be meeting every 2 weeks during budget season.
I mean, that would be hard for us because we have like a 6 or 7 ward meetings and the extra 2
Yeah.
town
But we
halls.
can meet always. You
Oh,
don't
yeah,
have-
that's, yeah,
We
you're right.
can meet as a
Yes.
committee, and you're our support, but I just think it's really important. I would propose.
Why don't we see what data we can get back by then, we can always decide.
The last thing just to add is that a little more aggressive on the lag.
On the what?
A lag, because, the.
Vacancy or like,
On the vacant pay, right, on the open position pay.
Yeah, it's like, open.
But that's-
What do we decide on the 8th?
5 o'clock.
Let's meet it, let's do it 5 o'clock on the 8th. How about that? That'll get,
Kids can make.
Does that work?
Yep.
I mean, yeah, November 8th
on the 8th, we'll instead of starting at 6, we'll start at
is
5.
not a Monday, right?
Mac and cheese.
No city council.
That's the next
Oh,
scheduled
you
meeting, on 11. Election day, we'll meet at 5.
Oh, it is the election day?
Yeah, yeah,
Have fun.
that's the next scheduled meeting.
So far, so good, but we'll see.
Okay.
How old are your kids also?
Okay,
Motion to adjourn.
all right.
Oh, I've got 20.
All right, so I think that's it for anything else, we'll.
Okay.
Was there a
Very
last?
good, thank you very much, appreciate it.